This is Tell Your Story Alaska. We talk aviation, history, theology, but most of all, the raw stories of Alaskans and the gospel. All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of Tell Your Story Alaska. I'm here with my friend Merv, Kinnan, and he and I go to the same church here in Alaska. And you and I got together at a coffee shop about a year ago, right? And you told me a little bit of your story. Do you remember that?
I do. Yeah, we were there with John, and
we were there for a long time too. And so I had a chance to hear a little bit of your story, and so you've been in the back of my mind for a long time to record your story because it fascinates me. And so tell us just briefly about you, your age, how long you've lived in Alaska. Give us just the bullet points there.
Certainly. Well, I'm 75 years old. I grew up in Shelton, Washington, where I had lived there with my family. There were 5 of us children in the family, an older brother and 3 younger sisters. And so anyway, my father worked at a lumber mill. We were in Salem, Oregon, but the jobs at that time were few and far between. So my dad heard about this new timber company moving into Shelton, and so he was able to get a job there, and so we moved the family there. And my dad was a World War II veteran, and he worked on airplanes for the Navy, and but he kind of got caught up in the World War II fever, and he was only 16 when he went into the service. And anyway, he was on the Enterprise aircraft carrier.
Wow.
And he worked first floor, which is the deck just below the flight deck. So he worked on the propellers and all the gearing there. But one of the bad things about being on that first deck is that whenever an aircraft would not start, somebody from that first deck went up to hand prop these aircraft. And usually you only get one chance at it because you're sucked right into the prop. And
I didn't know it was possible to hand prop a 1,200 horsepower engine.
Yeah, they did it. And
wow.
And so anyway, but they're off balance, and usually they were consumed and had to be washed overboard. And my dad was one of those that washed many of his friends overboard, and it bothered him to his death. And so anyway, he was what you'd say an angry man, and so it made for a heck of a home situation. So all of us could hardly wait until we were old enough to leave. But anyway, and we did one at a time. My brother left. He was on his own for a while, and then he went into the service, and then he preceded me going to Vietnam by about a year and a half. But anyway, so
well, let's talk about those younger years. Your father had, coming out of World War II with just issues, having experienced what he experienced, and that affected your childhood. Tell us about you and your siblings. What was that all like?
Yeah, well, we certainly appreciated what my father did for us. He worked. He was a good provider, but he was not a loving person. My dad actually was raised in foster homes, and he did not have a loving situation either. So as I look back, I cannot think of one time that he ever told me he loved me. But even though I knew as I grew up that his showing of love was being the provider. But he was not a conversationalist. He was not a very patient person. And if you don't watch out, you might get swatted, and not in the normal sense of being spanked. He'd just knock you on your bottom.
So it was a bit at home. It was a bit of walking on eggshells. Don't upset Dad.
Yeah, he comes in the front door. We went out the back. And so that was about it.
Yes.
Where's the kid? So I don't know.
It got you outside, though, didn't it?
Yeah, it got us outside climbing trees where he couldn't come and get us, but we had to come down sometime.
And were you close with your other siblings?
Yeah, we're kind of forced to be. My older brother was the first one to get a vehicle, and so he was had a lot of freedom, and so I would get to ride with him sometimes, but not always did I want to be with him either. He's not always the nicest person to be around, but.
Well, it sounds like there's like a generational, your father was wounded by the war in his own childhood, and then he sort of passed that on to you. Yeah,
he certainly did. And but we're trying to break that mold as I went to church maybe a handful of times while I was living at home, and that was only because the neighbor teenage girl would take us to church with her. And but that was not all that often. So, but I knew of God and of Jesus. But knowing of Him does not mean that you have accepted Him either. But yeah, so I remember many a times at night laying in bed with my personal light on and trying to read the Bible to get an idea of better ways of treating one another. But it really didn't dawn on me exactly what it all meant, because nobody was there to really explain it. So, but I did get some feeling that there's got to be a better way of interacting with one another. So,
and that's what you're looking for. That's something better.
Absolutely. So it was behavior is what I worked on. I worked on not using every four-letter word in the English language, and try to treat others kindly, just so long as they weren't coming at you with a fist or something. So anyway.
And what about your mother? What was she like?
My mother was quite reserved, especially living with my dad, and she opens her mouth, she was going to be contested, and so she'd usually just be quiet and not try to upset my father, who was he was like a time bomb sitting there just ready to be set off. So I don't know whether he knew that or not. It just seemed a little odd that he didn't try to control himself better, but he didn't. So
did he drink?
He was in the military. That's all he did. And so, and I guess in his early years of marriage, he did. But my mother, one time, had locked him out of the house and said, that's it. And so he complied, at least to what I could tell. So I could never smell anything on his breath. But anyway, once a drunk, always a drunk. It's just your attitude and your behavior just was uncontrolled unless you control it yourself. So,
and I haven't heard your completed adulthood story yet, but was there ever reconciliation with your father later in life?
Well, after I'd gone to Vietnam and I'd returned, he knew that I no longer was someone that he could control. He could not use intimidation or anything else to control me, because I've been over the hill. I know what's there. And I too was walking on eggshells, because you confront me and try to do something. It's fight's on. We're going to go right to the mat. But anyway, so in answer to that question, yes, we came to a mutual agreement without verbalizing it that we are on the equal plane. So you just don't try and treat me like your son. Treat me like another man. Yeah. So
and I'm curious, in your experience, I've heard similar stories with the same vein in it. Would you say that in your generation this was common?
Not from the friends that I had in school.
Okay.
Because academically I did well. So I was not looked down on as being from a home that was, that was fighting for identity, because I already knew who I was, and I already knew that I had potential. And so if I wanted to put the time in, my grades were right there with the best of them, top 5%.
Wow.
And so when I look across the room at the people that are there, I only see 5% of my equals.
Wow.
And even though I may not have the newest clothes on, I may not dress the same as those that come from affluent families, because that's where most of the other 5% came from, was from affluent families. But they're the ones that I can walk up to and talk to just like they're, my next door neighbor or something. But so anyway, they'd ask me. Every once in a while, it's pretty funny. I'd put some time in, and I'd max out a test, and the teacher would say only one person got 100%, and so everybody's looking around. Who did that? Who did that? And I wouldn't put my hand up. I just want them to think. Who was it?
It was more fun to let them wonder.
Oh, it was. Yeah, it was great fun. So anyway, I got caught a few times. Somebody looked over my shoulder and said, "It was him."
The quiet genius.
Yeah, shoot.
So tell us about moving in from a young man to ending up joining the military. Tell us about that process.
Yeah. So that was sad. That was sad, and I probably shouldn't have allowed it to bother me this much, but I was close to Seattle, within 100 miles. So maybe out around 150-mile circle, Seattle newspaper would put in the obituaries those young people that were coming home from Vietnam in the early years, starting 65, maybe even 64. They started putting it in the paper, the obituaries of those that were coming home within that radius, either injured or been killed in action. And I would look through that obituary area for those service people and see if they were someone that I knew or from families that I knew. And so I knew that I was going to go because my brother in 65, no, actually it was in 64, he was in the service. 65, he was in Vietnam. And so we're always wondering, how is he doing? Because he's a non-vocal person. He can't pick up a phone and call you. So we're waiting for a letter. Well, he never sent us any letters.
Wow.
So we're always wondering.
Is that why you were checking the obituaries?
Yeah, for one, looking for him. And the other is for students that I was in school with. They dropped out of school and they went over. They joined, and quite a few of them were dead within a month because when they went in, they were athletic, but they weren't intellectual. So they were in the infantry. They were out in the field. That's the worst place to be. And so...
Is that how they determine where you go? If you're less intellectual, more athletic, that's front line. Like, that's kind of...
Well, that's as far as you can progress because you were not able to get into that group that had to make decisions for everybody. So you're not going to get in there if you're not intellectually capable.
Yeah.
So they'd give them a rifle and train them enough on how to use it and then put them out in the field. And so I saw their death notices, and so it made it kind of tough trying to concentrate on your school studies. So when I was in my sophomore year, I started to let my grades just fall where they may without my putting much effort into studying. It just was not that high on my priority list. So I through that sophomore year. It was the start of my high school year grade starting to fall. By junior year, my brother was in Vietnam, and I could really care less about a grade. What is that when it comes to all these people that are dying? Because I was right there during the increase of soldiers going to Vietnam. It was so anyway. By my senior year, school was just not very high on my list, but I did need to figure out what is it that I wanted to do, and that's when the Army opened up a new program called the Warrant Officer Helicopter Pilot Training Program. And I said, that's what I want to do. I want to learn how to fly helicopters because I always wanted to fly airplanes because I'd gone up with a Civil Air Patrol person into a small airplane. And I said, yeah, this is what I want to do. Well, the helicopter pilots training program became available, and I said, okay, this is how I can do it, because all I have to have is a high school diploma. And so I took all their entry-level tests. Can't say that I maxed them out, but I did darn well on them. And so when I got out of high school, I got my draft notice. And I had 2 weeks to show up. But I was already signed up for the warrant officer program, but I was on a 500-man waiting list. So I called up my recruiter, and he said, okay, I'll give you a call back. And so he beat my draft notice by 3 days.
Wow.
And so,
because it's better to enlist than to be drafted, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because you can, especially since I'd already taken all the testing and I was accepted into that program,
Right.
I was not going to end up being ground fodder as a lot of the other people were doing. So anyway, I made it into the warrant officer training program. And that was what that was a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
So then warrant officer training, warrant officer candidates had to go to Louisiana, to Fort Polk, Louisiana, for our basic. Mm-hmm. And I lived only, 30 miles from Fort Lewis in Washington State, where I could have gone to basic training. But I said, no, you guys are going to go to Fort Polk because the weather down there is very close to what it is like in Vietnam. Mm-hmm. It is hot, humid, and you are going to just suffer.
That's what he told you?
Well, that's what somebody had told me.
Yeah.
This is going to be nasty. But it's for your own good. And I thought, yeah, okay, my own good. So away we went, and so I went to Seattle to the induction center, mm-hmm. And sitting there, also going into the warrant officer training program, was someone else, an old guy, and he was 28.
Old guy.
and
That's funny.
I'm 19. He's 28. Our birthdays are 1 day apart. My birthday is a day before his. And his last name and mine both started with a K.
Ah.
And so we went through basic training together, flight school together, and ended up being deployed in Vietnam together. And so we ended up being really good friends, to the point where, they're like Spock on whatever that
Star Trek?
Star Trek, yes. Yeah. Do the mind meld. well, between the two of us, we were almost nonverbal, that we knew what each other was thinking.
Yeah.
It was that kind of a close relationship. And anyway, it was kind of interesting. So he and I didn't have the same lifestyles. He was a married man, and I was not. He had reasons to live. I had my own reasons to live, but yet again, I was willing to do whatever it took as well. So,
yeah.
But we ended up being extremely close, and so which was really, really nice to have, especially going through training. You'd like to have someone that you can go talk to and kind of unwind with.
Yeah. And it must have been helpful as you're going overseas. You're with your guy. I mean, he's your...
Yep, yeah. And which was brought up a kind of a funny story. It was that we're both warrant officer ones, class one. Neither one of us really paid any attention to the awards and deck manual about how to put your brass on and whatever else you might have coming out of basic training and then out of flight training. But anyway, we were in our uniforms and had our brass on, and we're in Oakland, because that's where they housed us before we went over to San Francisco to fly out. But anyway, we were sitting in a little restaurant, just a little cubby hole of a place. Mm-hmm. And I had my back to the front door, and my friend looked up and said, "Oh, we're in trouble now." Because in comes this woman, and she's a W3. which has rank on us.
Mm-hmm.
And she went to walk by us, and then she did a double tick, and then she came back and she locked our heels and got us standing up, and she changed our brass around the way it's supposed to be on. And I looked at Neil when he was getting his change, and I said, "I told you." And she says, "You're not out of the woods either, buddy." So anyway, then she changed mine around. So we each had part of it right and part of it wrong.
Yeah.
And so anyway, we were arguing about it, but neither one of us give a darn. We're going to be dead in a month, and so what do we care?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Who cares about the brass, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Tell me about that mindset of we're going to be dead in a month. As we were talking before, you brought that up.
Yeah. Well, there's... You're kind of wondering, you know, especially me at 19, you know, I'm unproven. I've never been in a scrape that, other than a car accident, that could kill you. Mm-hmm. So how am I going to react? Am I going to freeze? Am I going to run like a scared rabbit when the bullets start flying? Or am I going to stand in there and do what needs to be done? So I had to come up with a mind frame that would help me through that particular first combat situation. And so I just considered myself dead already, but I'm not going to make it easy for them. They're going to have to work for it, because I'm going to put up a scrap as best I can. And so that was my crutch to help me not worry about what's going on around me. Focus, do what's necessary, whatever my job might be at that particular time. And let the chips fly, or fall, I guess, in this case, mm-hmm. where they may. So it was interesting, because, well, if anybody has been on or in a combat situation, let's say it's even a fist fight with 5 of your buddies against 5 of the buddies from neighboring town. Mm. Usually you'll have hand-picked people around you, but if you're in a mass of people that you never hand-picked, there's only going to be 10% of them that are going to stand behind you. The rest of them are going to run like crazy.
Yeah.
And out of that 10%, only 2 to 5% may stay right in there through the whole thing. Hmm. So when you're in a combat situation, some may be pinned down, but I was not in the field. I was in helicopters, so I was first flying the troop-carrying aircraft, and I'm getting sick and tired of being shot up. I want to shoot back. Mm-hmm. So I transferred over into the gunships. And, of course, at first I was a co-pilot with the guys that are flying the pilot and command position. So I got to fly with some of the best that we had available at that time. And I'd pick up a little bit of something from each one of them. Mm-hmm. And when I became the aircraft commander, well, I kind of consolidated all of those things I learned mm-hmm. To make my own style. Mm-hmm. And so, anyway, that's what I did for over a year. I extended for 6 months, so I was a aircraft commander in the gunships for over a year.
Wow!
And so that meant that I flew at least out of each week, I'd fly 3 to 5 days during the week. I'd have maybe 2 days off. And then as we ended up having our people rotating out, and I took on more of the responsibilities, at the end, I was flying every day for 3 months straight.
Wow.
And that meant you're looking for trouble. You're not going out there just flying around doing nothing. You're out there looking for trouble.
Yeah.
And that is the hardest time because of the lull. You're on pins and needles until that first bullet is shot. Then you say, now I know where they're at.
Mm-hmm.
Now I can go to work. And so, but waiting for that first shot was always the toughest.
And once they started coming, that brought the focus. I know exactly what I need to do.
Yeah. You know where you're going, what you're doing, and you knew how to direct those around you and to conserve your ammunition. You're not out there just to get rid of ammunition. You're there to use it discreetly. And then you had to pick your targets. You knew approximately where they're at, but are they hiding in a village? Now you got a dilemma. Are you going to shoot into that village? Usually not. Sometimes we may shoot a couple rounds because then you know that the villagers are going to go after whoever that was that shot out of that village. And so there's a way to get them shut up, or at least keep them from shooting at you from inside an area where they felt they were secure. And that is to aggravate the people. And once they're aggravated, they're going to take their hose and their machetes or whatever, and they're going to go after that Viet Cong or North Vietnamese regular that is hiding in that village.
Do you think they intentionally hid in the villages, hiding behind civilians, sort of a thing?
All the time.
Wow.
All the time. During the day, they're in the village. At night, they're out aggravating the doggone troops in the field. So,
but the villagers themselves did not like the soldiers among them.
No, because that brought attention to them, and that brought perhaps death in there as well. So, they many a time would find somebody drug out of the village that is done more to bring the wrath of the American troops upon them. So not good.
So let's get into some of the nitty-gritty stories that you would like to tell from some specific stories from your flying time in Vietnam.
Well, here's a funny one.
Okay, we'll start there. That sounds good.
It's not so funny that we've identified the enemy, and we are in a gun run, and we're shooting at them. And so I'm the aircraft commander, and anyway, I've got a new gunner sitting right behind me. We had 4 people in our aircraft, so we weren't the Cobras that had only 2 people in a slim body. We're wide-bodied, and we've got 4 crew members. So we got 2 people behind the pilots with their M60 machine guns, and the 2 up front is the aircraft commander and the co-pilot. The co-pilot's job is to look at those instruments while we're in this gun run and make sure that we don't get hit in the transmission or into the engine where we're losing oil pressure or RPM is going down or whatever. So that's his job, just fixed on those controls and instrumentation. The 2 guys in the back, they're firing straight ahead or wherever they can see people on the ground that were going to identify as being the enemy. And then the pilot in command is flying the aircraft and directing the rockets or the machine guns that are attached to the aircraft towards where the enemy is at. And so we're in this gun run. We're probably 500 feet off the ground, and then I get hit right in my left jaw. And my co-pilot's on my left. So I'm thinking he's trying to get my attention and just gave me a backhand. So I'm swapping my hands on the controls so I can give him a backhand. But when I look over, he's fixed on those instruments. I said, well, what just happened? And then my right hip started to hurt. And I said, ow, that is terrible. And so I pulled out of my gun run. I'm telling the lead gun ship that I've been hit. And he took it to mean that the aircraft got hit. He said, well, just check your instruments and get back into foray. And I said, no, you don't understand. I have been hit in the leg. I've gotten hit in the leg. Well, what it was, I got hit in the right ankle, and it hit so hard that my right foot came around and kicked me in the left jaw.
No kidding.
No kidding. And it was just bang, bang. And that's how fast it was. And my foot was right back down on the deck in front of me. It wrapped around my controls because I was holding it kind of back as I'd gone into the dive. And then I was kind of holding back on it, slowing down the descent. But anyway, it wrapped around my control and hit me in the left jaw. And so we pulled out of the gun run, and we're looking around for blood and can't find any blood. No blood. I said, how can I be hit in the leg and there's no blood? This is kind of stupid. And so we're looking.
Almost disappointing, isn't it?
It was, because your mind speeds up so fast. And the things that I was thinking was, I'm alive. I got my $1 million wound. I'm going home. And so all these things are going through my head. And when I look down there, we don't have any doors on the aircraft. So nobody could tell that there was a hole came through the side of the aircraft. It came through the door itself, the door opening, and got me on the left ankle, or excuse me, the right ankle on the outside. And so anyway, I finally realized it's not the hip, it's not the knee, it's down at my ankle. And I look at the outside of my boot, and there's what looks like a silver dollar size flat piece of a full metal jacket off of a 7.62 round.
Wow.
And it had gone flat, hit me flat, no blood involved, slapped the heck out of me. But anyway, I looked down there, and I peeled that thing off. I was so mad. I peeled it off, and I frisbeed it right out the door. And as it's flying away, I said, that would have been a nice memento to have.
It would have. I wish you would have kept it. You could have showed me.
Yeah. I said, darn, that was kind of, but I was mad. I was hotter because I'm not going home.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm coming back into the fray. Let's tell me what happened. I'll tell you later. So anyway,
wow,
that was kind of an odd thing to happen. How did that happen? And so, but right along with one that turned out well, there were so many of them that turned out not so well. Well, I can't say not so well. It meant that there's a lot more damage to an aircraft, but the four of us walked away. It was in the middle of the night. It was a 2 a.m. insertion, and anyway, I was flying the wing of my not company, but platoon leader was the lead gunship, and I was his wingman. And we were escorting these 10 aircraft into a night insertion. Well, it ended up being such a free-for-all. It was crazy. We couldn't find the troops to get them onto the aircraft so we can put them into the area. So we're out there burning fuel, and the gunships don't have as much fuel as the troop-carrying aircraft. So we landed in the middle of a field, and we're back-to-back watching the tree lines on both sides. And I'm looking in the direction of where we're going to land. And there's a fourth aircraft, and they're dropping flares to get the right settings on the flares, because as they drop, the atmospheric condition as they're dropping will then set the flare off. Yeah. So they're trying to figure out
they're calibrating it.
Yeah. And I said, "Are you over the landing field, over where we're going to land the troops?" And they said, "Yeah." I said, "Thank you. You just sent all the Hallmark cards to the Viet Cong to tell them where we are going to land. Mm-hmm. They are sitting there ready for us." Oh, wait until I get you back to the company. I'll tell you,
Yeah. I have a different word for you.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yes.
But anyway, so they had already sent out the invitations. Our welcoming committee was waiting for us. When we made our first pass coming in, things were hot. Oh my gosh. I've never seen so many tracers in one area. It was scary. You almost had to fly with one eye open because the other one you wanted to close. You didn't want to see all these bullets coming at you. So anyway, we went ahead and tried to get them in. Couldn't do it, so we called for a go-around. I'm on the inside of the turn, and I'm supposed to cut across over here while the troop carriers come back in and start back in. Well, anyway, I didn't gauge far enough. I was sitting right in front of them when they came around. And I had my crew looking out. Where are these aircraft? I can't find them. And they said, well, so I kind of did a little swaying back and forth and they were right behind us. And finally, my crew chief said, they're going to be close. And when he yelled, they are close, and I just tipped the aircraft over and dove straight down, and my tail went right by the co-pilot's door.
Wow.
And my tail rotor hit their main rotor.
Wow.
But it was just a tick.
Yeah.
And because it hardly even dented their main rotor. But it took my tail rotor right off.
The whole thing?
I don't know if the whole thing, but what happened afterwards, we couldn't tell what was from the impact and what was from the impact. But anyway, so I'm diving. And now all of the weaponry from the ground were looking right at me. So all these red tracers, which had 4 untracered bullets in between them.
I was just thinking that. I heard that. The tracers was every 4th, yeah.
Yeah, every 5th.
Oh, it's 5th, okay.
Yeah, so it's every 5th. So there's 5 of them. And Well, anyway, they just made Swiss cheese out of us, but none of us got hit by a bullet. And so when we're going down, I'm saying, I'm calling out that I'm going down, meaning I'm gonna land right here wherever I'm at. I'm landing, and nobody could hear me because my radios and battery were all Swiss cheese.
Yeah.
And so anyway, it went out weak enough that somebody finally said they're coming in to get us, and it was Chalk 2. Well, it's usually Chalk 10, the very last one, is the one that goes in to get you. But 2 peeled off, and he came down to get us. So I'm saying, well, I don't know what's in front of me. It's black. We don't have any lights. We can't see. I guess we're going to take whatever happens. That's what happens.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, we're going down. I slid down in my seat so that I could see the top of the rice paddy. Well, there's still one flickering flare that they had dropped, and it was putting out enough light that I could see the top of that rice paddy. So I knew where the ground is. That's it. So my training kicked in and says, 100 feet, start slowing this thing down. 50, start really pulling it back. And let's get this thing into a vertical descent. And then you're going to pull whatever.
Was this an auto rotation, or was your engine gone?
You can't tell. No lights.
Sure. Okay.
My dashboard's black.
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's gone.
Okay.
And I should have. Well, anyway, there's a lot of things I should have. But anyway, I shouldn't have gotten up that
Sounds
day.
like you did fine, though.
Well, we pulled her up, and when I pulled, it's so dark you can't tell what's going on. But anyway, I pulled the collective to put pitch into the blades to slow my descent as we were getting close to the ground. We went around 2.5 times. And I never knew it because I couldn't see. There's nothing to look at. So anyway, I went around 2.5 times, and we went in backwards.
Oh.
When we went in backwards, the tail boom took all the shock.
Yeah.
And I'm looking out my door, and I said, I got to jump down there about 4 or 5 feet. What the heck's going on? I still was clueless as to what happened.
Yeah.
Anyway, we're sitting up there, and it also went left because of the rotation of the rotor also kicked it left. So it's crushed in the back where my crew chief would have been sitting. And anyway, so 3 of us get out, and the rocket pods are all on fire, the engine's on fire, and we're like around a bonfire with everybody shooting at us.
Yeah.
And we can hear all this going on. I didn't feel anything, so I guess we're all right yet. So where's the 4th guy? And my co-pilot is digging underneath the aircraft. And he's a kind of a smaller guy. And when he got done, he couldn't find any arms or legs. So I reached in there, and when I'm groping around the mud, and somebody comes out of the dark and says, "What are you guys doing?" Said, "Well, we're looking for you, you fool." Said, "Oh, I got thrown out over there when the aircraft went around, and it threw me out, and I was stuck in the mud. I was up to my knees in the mud, and it took me a while to get out." So here was one of the things that I was able to look back at and say, what did God do? He saved us not only from the full impact by bringing us in backwards and letting the tail boom take it, but where the person that would have died he was gone.
Yeah.
Threw him out over
Threw
here.
out.
And I said, wow, you got to be kidding. But I didn't really come to that realization until years later.
Because you can't put together how that would have worked with, just naturally.
I didn't have the spiritual discernment during that particular time. And so when we started looking back at all these things, look, he'd even been shot and no blood.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't get a Purple Heart. Well, don't worry about the Purple Heart.
Right.
You didn't lose your doggone use of your ankle and your leg either. And I said, gotta be kidding me.
Wow.
And so there are so many of those that my first engine failure wasn't mine. I was the co-pilot. Was due to sabotage.
Really?
We went through 16 motors, turbine motors on those helicopters. Ours was the 16th one, and they finally figured out what it was. It was somebody that was taking 12-gauge shotguns, shells, opening them up and dumping the shell, all the BBs, into the intakes.
Okay.
And then when you're flying along, it works its way through and just guts the engine right out.
Right.
Well, they found one of those BBs caught in one of the blades.
Yeah.
And they said, that's what's doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And when we got back and we'd heard it, they found out how that happened. They'd scarfed that guy up and got him the heck out of the company before we got home.
He was an American guy doing it.
He was an American guy.
No kidding.
Yep.
Did you ever find out what his agenda was?
Well, it was during the 60s, so you have to kind of play that by ear.
Okay. Sure. Fair enough.
Yeah. So, anyway. Yeah. And so that was a real bad thing. But, then my transition, after coming home, I was Mazda Hatter. It didn't take you but 3 or 4 months being in Vietnam to realize that we are not meant to win this war. They would give us stand-down days when we had the enemy on the run, where we knew where they're at, and they would give us a stand-down day. It was only the Americans were fighting hard in I and 2 Corps, which are the northern parts of South Vietnam.
Okay.
I was in 3 and 4 Corps, Saigon to the end of the South Vietnam, which were South Vietnamese troops that were fighting in that area. Mm-hmm. But they were attached to the leadership of South Vietnam. And so it was 10 or 12 different factions within South Vietnam that were fighting for control. Mm-hmm. So the president of South Vietnam would tell his people, don't engage. Because if he loses strength in the field, then the other groups would take control of South Vietnam and change of the presidency. Yeah. And so, anyway, we knew somewhat of that through the just a normal scuttlebutt that why are these people not fighting? Why are they always backing out every time we catch the bad guys? Yeah. And they said, well, because they've been told not to engage, because if they end up losing a lot of people, then he loses control of the presidency.
Wow.
Said, wow.
So they're paralyzed.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
So we ended up having to do a lot of it from the air, or what our own. We had very small groups of American troops. Mostly they were mercenaries, but we got to use them every once in a while, and they'd just clean their clocks, you know. But we don't have enough of them to fight this war, so we're kind of just in a stalemate kind of a thing. And but anyway, it was interesting that they aren't going to fight. We're out there getting the heck kicked out of us all the time, and being shot up and shot down is not a good thing. And so we come to the realization, you're going to end up just doing what you have to do, keep yourself alive, and let's get out of here after your year is up.
That became the mindset.
And that is it. Yeah, stay alive so you can go home, and it's somebody else's problem. And but it's still all of our problem. You know, we left a lot on the field that you know, fighting for another nation is not always an easy thing to do. So you're fighting for yourself to stay alive and helping them out as much as you can. But then when you find out that they're not willing to fight for themselves, then what's the sense?
And what are we doing?
What are we doing?
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you come back and you find out that the Pentagon bean counters are lying to the people making the decisions over there. And then they said, well, that's what we thought they wanted to hear. So when you get all these stories coming out, and oh man, you just want to just blow up.
Yeah.
And some did. I knew it was futile, so I turned to alcohol is what I turned to.
So you didn't blow up, you turned to the bottle.
Yep. Didn't do anything to just anesthetize yourself, just numb yourself, try not to think about it. But then, you know, people talk about PTSD a lot, but, you know, a lot of those things that I was feeling were things that were helpful in self-preservation.
Yeah.
You know, the hyper, what do I call that? Hypervigilance, you know. I can tell if somebody was behind me looking at me. I could feel it.
Yeah.
And quite often you turn around and to confirm it, and there's somebody staring at you. And so, and then on your part is that you need to know where everybody's at, what they're doing.
It's kind of even now you walk into a room and you scan.
You scan,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And there was never a time that I would sit at a table that had the door to my back.
Yeah.
I had to have a wall to my back.
Yeah. Like right now.
Like right now. That's right. That's right. But yeah, and yeah, the nightmares, the gore. You know, they always think that, you know, people in a helicopter, they're not going to see anything. Well, we're right down there at 50 feet off the ground with these darn helicopters. And we see what happens. We see the bodies fly apart. I've watched a minigun just take the skin and muscle right off of a skeleton, and just boom. And so those things, I would close my eyes at night, and no matter what I did, I don't care how much I drank or whatever, when my eyes went closed, those visions were right there. And I said, I can't do this. So I wouldn't go to sleep at night.
Yeah.
I'd stay up until it was twilight. I could go to sleep if it's twilight. Or the other is that when cars are driving up and down the road, then I know somebody else is on watch.
Yeah.
Like when I was in Vietnam, if the 6-inch or 8-inch howitzers on the corners of the base, if they're shooting, I can sleep.
Then
like
you
a
sleep
baby.
because someone's watching.
Yeah,
Clearly, someone's watching.
that's right.
Yes.
That's when I would go to sleep. But when they go silent, man, I'll come.
Is anyone watching?
Yeah, oh, I'd come right out of that bed and grab a gun.
Yeah.
And so all those things, the flashbacks, the nightmares, the sweats, and wake up where you have to just change.
How long
all
did
the
those
sheet.
go for?
Years.
Okay.
Yeah. And
Does it ever happen today?
no, as a matter of fact, it went away, but that wasn't until after a lot of other things had happened, which finally brought me to my knees, and that happened. Well, I guess I'll go into that. Is that I worked at a power plant, a coal-fired power plant, for quite a few years, but I also would work at the airport as a flight instructor.
Oh.
I flew small fixed-wing aircraft and would teach people from the ground up about how to fly. Yeah. Then they got a helicopter in, and so I was flying the helicopter, not in training anybody, even though I had my helicopter instructor license. I got some contracts going. One of them was at the coal mine, where the management wanted to go around and look at all of the progress they were doing in the mine. You know, they got all the tailings. They have to take all the dirt off the top of the coal. Then they have to blow it up to break it up, and then they'd go and dig it out. So it is wanted to look and see how their excavation was going, how their tailings is doing. Is it set up properly so the rain won't wash it all back into where it's not supposed to be, and all this kind of stuff. So I had all of the big wigs with me, and I'd fly them all around. And so anyway, pretty soon my name got around to where I ended up flying. I quit my job at the power plant, quit my instructor flying.
Where was that power plant?
In Centralia, which is halfway between Seattle and Portland.
Okay.
And it's on the west side of the state. And so anyway, what was I going to say? Oh, I ended up getting a job offer from a family-owned forest products company. And so I said, yeah, I'm going to have to match what I'm making now, and plus a little, and all of my expenses are going to go on you. And I said, yeah.
Sounds like you're in a position you could do that.
I can do that.
Yes.
Yeah. There weren't too many of us around.
Yeah.
Well, there were quite a few, but a lot of them, they didn't want anything to do with people. But yeah, I was flying into Seattle and into parking lots alongside Porsches and Lamborghinis. And I said, you really want me to fly in there? I said, yeah, darn right. If they can park their dang Lamborghini somewhere else. So anyway, I'd fly them in there. They'd go in and see their lawyers or whatever it was. And so then would fly out. And so it was pretty fun because never a day was the same as the other. And they had so many different things going on other than forestry. One of them was I had the old man with me, and he said, I want to go over across the mountains there and check out my horses. I said, pretty foggy up there. He said, well, do you think you can make it through it? Well, there's one thing about fog, is that you don't know how bad it is until you're in it.
Right.
And he says, all right.
Well, let's get in it.
Hey, let's go. So we're going up through Snoqualmie Pass, which is the lowest pass there in the Cascade Mountains. And so anyway, we get in there, and I know there are big high-tension wires that go across the peaks. And it says, well, we're getting close to those. It is really tough to see, and I know we won't be able to maintain a separation from those wires because you can't see them at all.
Right.
And he said, well, do we need to go back? He said, no. See that doggone 18-wheeler? I came right down in behind him, little off to the side so he could see me. And he's looking in his rearview mirror.
You can see his little eyes. Huh?
Yeah, you can see me sitting right behind him. And so I kicked my tail over to one side so that cars coming up behind us won't run into me. I wasn't down to that low. I was probably 10 feet above the truck.
Yeah.
And but I wanted to make them feel comfortable, and I didn't want to be too high for those high tension wires. So as we got close to the top, and of course the fog dissipated, and said, "Now we can go." He just shook his head, and that was it.
Yeah.
And so.
That's a good way to do it. I've done that myself in those sorts of conditions.
Yeah.
Get down to a road or a river. Yeah.
Yeah. Get right down in there. So that was pretty neat. But that particular job ended in the fall of '79 because 1980 was the recession, and the first companies that really are hit hard are the lumber companies.
Okay.
And most of their money was tied up in either forestry holdings or lumber mills themselves.
Okay.
So they had to let me go. And then while I was looking at it, I said, I did pretty good here. Got a pretty good savings.
Yeah.
So I called up the feds and said, hey, what do I got to do to start my own company? And they said, well, this is what you need to do. I said, good. And send me the paperwork, and away I went. So through the winter, I worked on my 135, what do I want to say?
Yeah, Part 135, like all the loopholes, right?
Yeah, and used the feds as my check pilots. So I can be a single pilot operation.
Yeah.
And so away we went. And what happens as soon as March of 1980, I'm 35 miles away from Mount Saint Helens.
You're kidding.
And it starts to rumble.
Wow.
And so anyway, I think it was March 26th or so that the first holes on top of Mount Saint Helens opened up.
Yeah.
And just some rocks coming out of it, and that's all at that point. So I get a call from Portland, from ABC, and they say, we got some camera crew coming up from Los Angeles. We'd like for you to fly them around.
Okay.
I said, fine. Here we go. And so I went down to Portland, picked up a cameraman and his sound man. Cameraman's an ex-Marine, sound man in the back, which we call the dog on a backseat driver because he's always giving me heck. And so anyway, he's ex-Army, and so away we go. And man, we went at it for a couple months, and so. And,
just touring touring, but flying around, just monitoring
every day. Yeah, see the change in the mountain. Give interviews of some of the people that have mostly vacation properties along the rivers or up closer to the lake and that kind of thing. And so, so we just watched it, and we were flying 2 months straight, and we were all getting tired. Oh, we were tired. So we were, almost all the helicopter people were in the Red Lion on the Portland side of the Columbia River. But our helicopters are over at Pearson Air Park there in Vancouver, Washington, because it doesn't cost us anything to park there. And so anyway, 8 o'clock in the morning, that restaurant started rocking and rolling. We knew what that meant.
Yeah.
Well, none of us paid our bill. We just got up and bolted for that door, jumped in our cars, got on to the freeway, and I mean, we just literally pushed people off the freeways so we can get over there to those helicopters.
Yeah.
And laws didn't seem to apply at the moment.
Yes.
And so anyway, we jumped in those aircraft, and I decided to go up the freeway and come up the Toutle River because we knew that water was coming down. And so anyway, here's a bunch of people in the yards along that Toutle River, and they're doing some cleanup from the winter and what have you. And the Marine says, sit right here and let's wait until that wall of water comes down and washes them away.
You're kidding.
I said, oh no. I had a PA system on my aircraft. And I said, get out of here, run, because that wall of water is coming your way.
Wow.
And he looked at me and said, you ruined my camera work.
He really said that?
Oh, he did, yeah. Isn't that terrible?
Yes.
But anyway, I wasn't having any of that, so up the darn river we went. It was quite a ways up there before we run into the first wave, and it was just ripping everything out because it was heavy laden with the soils and it's not lava, it's more like a sandy
mix
material.
of water and dirt material.
Yeah. Oh, it was just like concrete, wet concrete coming down. It was so heavy, and it was just ripping everything out. Hit the bridges and ripped them out, and it was just really something. But that's what we did for a few months until the owner of the aircraft come to me and says, I'm going to raise the rates. I said, no, you're not. And so anyway, he got greedy. He was a rich guy, and he got greedy. He wanted more money and said, it ain't going to happen. I wrote the contract between us and said that either one of us could break the contract at any moment, whatever we want. So,
yeah.
Anyway, so, but it was right during the spool up time for the industry, so I called, and I couldn't find anything until I got to Chicago. And I said, no, I'm not going all the way out there to go get an aircraft, so no thanks. And it was too big for me anyway, and it would have really raised the rates way up.
Yeah. So that was kind of the end of that endeavor.
That was the end of it, yeah. There went my company. But all that to say this, that was the first thing to happen out of 3. My company failed. I had to go back and get my old job back, which I was trained high enough in that power plant that, that was no big deal.
Yeah.
So I got my job back. And then one day when I come home from work, all the lights in the house were out. My wife took the kids and left. And the next morning, drives a vehicle into my driveway, and the guy gets out and serves me with divorce papers and an edict for me to vacate the property within 2 hours.
Wow.
Now it's a little hard to take.
Yeah.
It was on a Friday. Weren't going to be able to get somebody to represent you, so I got a weekend ahead of me.
Did you see that coming at all?
Yes, but when you're married, you want to be able to trust your partner, and I could see different things that didn't look right. But then I'm starting to think, am I starting to make things up? Well, evidently not. So, boom, she left, and I started living out of my car in the parking lot of where I work, because there's a bathroom and shower stalls at work.
Yeah.
And
back to the basics.
Oh yeah, no kidding. I tell you this, but working 12-hour shifts help. You're only off for 12, then you're back on. But I said, I can't do this. So my parents lived almost an hour away, and they had a kind of a room like you've got here. So I decided, well, I'll go up there and it's over an hour drive up, hour drive back, so there's 2 to 3 hours shot out of my 12 hours off.
Right.
And so anyway, still had plenty of time to sit around and think and kick the dog and and all that. And so after a while, I couldn't take it any longer. I've got to do something here. So I went looking for a lawyer, and we're going to fight this thing.
Yeah.
She wanted the daughter, which is our second child. My son is handicapped. And he says, you get him.
Really?
And I said, no, I'm going to take both of them. She said, no, you're not. I'm going to take you for everything you got. And I said, now we got a reason to put all the effort you can put in to this. This is not going to happen. You're not getting those children. Besides that, she had found someone else to live with, and he was 19 years old. She was 28, so he was 9 years younger than she.
Yeah.
This happened because she wanted to finish her college. I said, as soon as our youngest is in preschool, that frees you up at the same time that she's in school, you can be in school. Well, that's where she met this young man, and this is where she developed her relationship. And so, anyway, they were well into that. And so anyhow, I was hot and bothered.
I imagine, yes.
to say the least. And so the first lawyer that I got gave me back my I forgot what you call that. You give them a stipend there that shows you're committed, and so they'll start working for you.
Yeah, sure.
And so anyway, he gave me that money back, gave me all my notebooks back that I had, and said, "Get out of here.
You're kidding.
I can't handle this." So nobody else would take me. So I went to a neighboring town. And
did he think he wasn't going to win this thing, or what? Why would he?
No, he didn't want anything to do with me.
With you?
Yeah, with me.
Okay.
Because boy, I put some stuff down on that paper about what I'm going to do to him, and I'd come across so many articles of Vietnam veterans come home from remote whatever and find a wife and love her in bed and kills one or both or whatever. And I said, Lord, is this what a Vietnam veteran's supposed to do?
Wow.
is kill these people? And anyway, I knew that was wrong. So anyway, because, well, it was wrong because, number one, they'd lose a mother and then their father would be in jail, so they lost both parents.
Right.
So, and no, that's not what we're going to do. So, okay, so I went to the neighboring town, and somebody said, go see Evelyn, this old 80-year-old lawyer that's been in business for 30 years, 40 years, whatever. And she just took me under her arm like I'm her sweet little kid and put her arm around me and said, now, Merv, settle down. We'll get through this.
Yeah.
And so that's what I needed. Evidently, somebody that had an even keel that wasn't about ready to buck me on everything I wanted to do. But even though that's exactly what she did.
Yeah. But she did it in a mothering way, which is what you needed. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I'd heard that my wife's lawyer wanted to be paid X amount of money, and I said, you kidding me? Me gotta pay for her to divorce me and try and take my kids away from me? You gotta be, oh, Merv, come on, fork up the money and let's get it done.
So how did that play out?
Yeah, it was really something, but it got to a point where it kind of come to a standstill. We both said what we wanted, and now it went to third party. We had to have child custody evaluations. That meant they're going to interview her with her boyfriend, interview me, and see what was the dynamics of the family before it broke up, who really cared for the children, and well, just what's going to go on in the future. And so anyway, my wife at the time performed 90% of the child care. I had about 10% because I had 3 jobs at the time.
Yeah.
I was working at the mill, at the power plant, plus working at 2 different airports as an instructor pilot.
Right.
And so, but in the interview, one of them was a sociologist. The other one was a University of Washington psychologist. And so he said, don't worry about it. When they wrote up the reports, even though they're supposed to be separate, we know darn well that they're talking amongst themselves. But anyway, because it was the similarities, I said, I only need to read one of these.
Yeah.
But anyway, it says, well, she performed 90%, he did 10%, but she's got a boyfriend that's 9 years younger than her. And he doesn't talk because she does all the talking for him. Anyway, so and they said, don't worry, we're going to have another one in 3 months. So the 2 of you are going to share the house. Every 2 weeks, you guys change. The kids stay home.
Wow.
And And so anyway, well, that wasn't equal, I'll tell you that for sure. I'd put food in the refrigerator and it was all gone by 2 weeks.
Yeah,
and I had to do it all over again. And I said, okay, that's no big deal. And my wife had hired a young lady that had preconceived ideas that I am the so-and-so, and she's the injured party.
Yeah.
And then one day she says, I misjudged you.
Wow.
I didn't realize that she's the so-and-so, and you're the one that wants to care for the kids.
Yeah.
And I said, well, thank you for saying that, and thank you for staying on until I can find somebody to help us out long term. Anyway, so the next time we have the child custody evaluations for the second go-around, I'm walking from the sociologist's office down the sidewalk, and I'm reading this thing. First 3 pages were the same as last time. She performs all of this and blah, 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 blah. I get the last darn paragraph and it says, I recommend that Mr. Kinnan gets full custody of both children.
Wow.
And about that time, I walked right into one of those parking meters and kind of said, whoa. And because I was reading pretty intently, and wham, I hit that dang thing. And I said, holy cow, I better read this other one. And sure enough, the same thing.
Wow.
I get full custody. And that's in... I can't remember. Kramer and Kramer came out about that same time, and it was almost the same scenario where the man gets partial custody or gets all the custody. I never did see that movie, but somebody had told me that that's just about like
that movie. Yeah, it came out about the same time.
It did.
Yeah.
And I thought, wow. Anyway, I couldn't believe it.
Wow.
So I had to really start getting moving here.
How old were your 2 children at that time?
5 and 8.
Okay. Wow.
And the older one is handicapped. He's in a wheelchair. He has cognitive ability problems. He's almost has a photographic memory. He can remember anything he reads, and verbatim he can read it back to you. Yeah, it's just that he doesn't know how to handle that information. He can't process it and process it like a normal person would do. Okay, he looks at it more from a personal viewpoint. This is information for me. This is how I can apply it to beat somebody over the head with it. Say no.
Yeah, no.
We'll
work on that. Right?
Yeah. Which was kind of interesting. After he got out of college, he had a degree in cartography. Went to work for Washington State, and the first day he's at work, he's looking at his boss and says, I've got more education than you do. I should be running this doggone thing instead of you. I said, Kevin, that's not the way.
Yeah, that's not what you do.
Oh my gosh, what did you do, buddy? That was pretty funny. So he didn't last long.
Yeah, sure.
But he did get a master's degree out of University of Hawaii.
Oh, okay.
But nobody will hire him, so word got out.
Sure.
He's smart, but by golly, he'll try and beat you up.
Yeah, so that makes it hard to hire. Yeah.
Yeah, hard to hire, yeah. So anyway, I guess I was back to having multiple things happen at the same time. The divorce came on, I lost the business, and had to go back and and run the gauntlet at work again, and so they're laughing at me. And you tried to get away, but you had to come back.
You can't stay away.
Yeah. But it was still lonely in between there, and I realized that I played church. I wasn't really involved, and so that was when I come home. The house is empty in the mere fact the furniture is there, but it's empty. There's nobody there, no interaction, and so anyhow, that's when I hit the floor and asked God to come into my heart. There had to be some changes, and the hatred that I had was just overwhelming. It was taking me over, and I can't do this anymore. And so I don't want to go out and do bodily harm, even though I play that scenario through my mind too often. And I said, no, this is not right, not right. So help soften me. So anyway.
I was just reading it. Well, I was talking to someone last night about this. The beginning of the Beatitudes in Matthew 5 of the Sermon on the Mount. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And to be poor in spirit means to be broken. There's something about brokenness that draws us to the Lord.
Yeah, it is. It is, yeah. And I see that all around me, that those that play like they're macho man and are just willing to put their heads down and just bowl their way through, it never gets any better for them.
Yeah.
At least in the true sense of the word. And so where I no longer have my finger on the rocket launching system or the minigun system, I am defenseless. I am, except that I have a better defense than what I had when I had the armament available to me. All I got to do is sit down and commune with my Father, and He will protect me. Just like when 3 pages out of 4 says that the wife should get everything because she is the provider for the children, the nourishing provider.
Yeah.
I may be the subject provider, but anyway, and then you get to the end and it says, it had to be God involved with this to have the last paragraph state something totally different than what all the other 3 pages were saying.
Your life is partially defined by being the exception. The helicopter crash, and now this, the rare time when the husband gets the custody.
Absolutely, it was so rare at that particular time. There wasn't even that many people that had co-custody of children, let alone full custody of children, and so yeah, it was really something. It just blew my mind, and it made me really get going, because I needed this young lady who was not going to stay forever. As a matter of fact, it was not a real good situation where she's still there with the ex-husband. And so who come to help me? My wife's twin brothers, the more active one, the one that likes to go out and do things. He ended up being a policeman eventually, but he was finishing college, so he stayed with us. So when I worked at night, he was there.
Oh, okay.
He'd be doing his schoolwork and overseeing the kids while they're asleep, and then anyway, so it all worked out pretty neat. Yeah. And so I thought, that's something. And then as the kids and I, I got a call from my ex-boss there in Centralia, and he'd taken a job over in Spokane. And he says, "Hey, how'd you like to come work for me?" I said, "Where are you at?" And he said, "Yeah, well, we're building a brand new power plant, and I want to bring you and a couple other guys over." And I said, "Yep." Called it the right time. And so 900 miles, I'm out of here. Got the two kids in tow. I asked my old lawyer, and he says, "Can I take these kids out of the county? It's not out of the state, but it's out of the county." And he says, "Why not? What are they going to do? They going to sue you?
Yeah.
They don't have any money. They can't sue you." And so, boom, best thing we ever did. Got some separation between us because she was always trying to pull some shenanigan and get the kids all upset and blah, blah, blah. So all I got to do is just hang up the phone, and it was the end of that. Yeah. And so she lost control over everything that was going on. And then as things are going on, things just fell into place. I was looking at somewhere between $250,000 to $500,000 to put my son through college.
Wow.
That's how much it would cost for his care and everything else. And it was his senior year, and one of the school teachers says, "You do know all you have to do is, as soon as he turns such and such, I forgot what it was, 18 or whatever, is that apply for this, and this from the state of Washington. They'll pay for all of his college. They will pay for his care. They'll pay for this and that." You got to be joking me. Where do I sign up? So go right down there to the old social health and welfare building, and they'll sign you up on all the programs. And wow, they paid for all of his school, paid for his care, everything. And I thought, man, that was a big one. I thought I was going to be eating sardines and crackers for the rest of my life.
Beans and rice. And rice.
Man, no kidding. And then along comes just a few other small things. And small in some ways, but I was driving between, my son was going to Eastern Washington University. We're above Spokane. Eastern Washington University was below Spokane at Cheney, and so I was driving up and down there because I used to play with computers a lot. And anyway, so I'd go down, fix his computer, he'd mess it all up. I'd go fix it up, and okay, now don't do that again. Oh yeah. So anyway, on the way back home, I went through Spokane, and there was a long straightaway, and I could see somebody up there thumbing for a ride. And I said, well, got plenty of room, so no big deal. So I picked this young man up, and he jumps in, and he's college age as well, and had a backpack on. So I started talking to him a little bit. Where are you going? So I know where he's headed to and what road he needs to be by so he can get to his next destination and all that. But he looks Oriental. And I thought, should I mention it? and so, not only Oriental, he looks Vietnamese.
Wow.
So I asked him, are you Vietnamese? He said, yeah. But I was looking at you, and you're probably of the age that you were probably over there, so I didn't know that I wanted to say anything. I said, that's all right. It's no big deal. I have no animosity towards the people. And he said, yeah, I was the last baby to leave the embassy. I said, you're kidding me. I saw that footage. It was the CIA helicopters were evacuating the consulate. It's not really the embassy.
Mm-hmm.
It was the consulate's helipad. And they have this stairwell that only one person at a time could be on that stairs. One person in line, but the whole thing was just lined up. The last helicopter was leaving that consulate helipad, and it's a girl on there, and she tosses her child up maybe 3 or 4 feet to the arms of the crew member.
Yeah.
And he says, that was me.
You're kidding.
I said, wow. And said, yeah, I was raised in Central Oregon by a Lutheran pastor and his wife. And so anyway, I said, you got to be kidding me. Anyway, and then he said, I want to give you a Bible. I said, nope, you're not giving me any Bible. Stern as I could be at the moment. You're not giving me a Bible. He looked a little dejected until I said, unless you put in your Vietnamese name and you put in your Western name. And I have a picture of that Bible.
Oh, okay.
In there. I have that Bible at home. And anyway, it's not only it's a pocket Bible. And so being small, but I opened it up and took another picture of that with his 2 names in there.
Okay.
And I thought, wow, God is good. One more story. It's not quite that dramatic. Well, it could be, I guess. One day I was going from work in Eastern Washington, which is about 11 miles from where I live, and I picked up this guy that had a naval slicker on. And I thought, yeah, there's a lot of ex-military there in the Colville area next to the Canadian border. And so I picked him up. And he said he was going to the same town that I was going to, so no big deal. And we started up a conversation rather quickly. 11 miles, you don't have much time. So anyway, he was so disheveled. He was looking terrible. And I asked him, are you okay? And he said, no, I'm still having a lot of difficulties with the mere fact that I was in Beirut in 1984. I'm trained as a SEAL. I'm trained in martial arts. And I was on the back perimeter of the Marine barracks in Beirut when they blew it up. Killed 274 Marines in there. And you know what I had for that that perimeter. I had an M16, but they wouldn't give me any bullets. All I had was a K-bar knife. That was as lethal of a weapon that I had. Do you think those people knew they were going to blow it up? I know that they took the bazookas away from the guys that are in the front gate, so they couldn't stop any vehicles from coming in. They took that away from them. They allowed those people to die, and I couldn't stop it. And so this poor kid was beating himself up. And by that time, I was so flabbergasted, because that's the first time I'd heard any stories like that.
Yeah.
And we were at our destination, and I was, oh man, I wish I had more time with this boy. Because the same thing with us is that we come to the realization, no matter how hard we fought, we were prevented from winning this. And we could have put a stop to this crap a long time ago. And even some of my high school friends that were in 65 bombing the Ho Chi Minh Trail, they've got, 5 or 6 bridges there. They blow almost all of them up except for one, and then they were told to stand down and let them build them back up. And I said, well, that's when I lost all my faith in government.
Yeah.
Is that they have a different agenda than what we're told.
Yeah.
So it's anyway. So you had to turn to spirituality. Well, not in the mere fact of witchcraft and what have you. I mean, we need to know what is going on. And when you start looking at the world in a spiritual sense, read what God told us is going to happen. And where are we now in this prophetic timeline? We're that close.
Yeah.
We're that close. And there are many a time when, when things felt so heavy on my shoulders that I wished that I would have died on the battlefield. It would have been the end of it for me.
Yeah.
Except God said it wouldn't have been the end of it for you. It would have meant that you would have gone to hell because you weren't saved. I wasn't going to let you die until you come to me. And I said, you're right. I wasn't ready. Even though any change from what was going on now would have felt better. I said, no, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't. And I said, well, now I know. And you're right. And I'm glad that you didn't allow me to die in any of these situations. But I did not see your hand until now. And so
hindsight is 20/20 sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. If not everybody would have looked at it from that standpoint, because if I had not come to Christ, one of the major things that scared the living heck out of me was Hal Lindsey's book called
The Late Great Planet Earth.
The Late Great Planet Earth. I read it forward to backward, and anyway, it scared the living heck out of me. I don't remember much about it other than the feeling of just holy catfish. The time is here, and anyway, so. I'd have to go back and go read that again.
I hear a lot in your story the theme of anger. So there's the experiences you had at war, you find out what the government was. It was an unwinnable thing, but you were there anyways.
Yeah.
Then coming back and the greedy guy who wanted to raise the rates, and it was the end of your company. Then it was the divorce with your wife. Just there's a lot to be angry about, and in the midst of that, you found faith, and you've been on this journey since then. Talk about. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there, but talk about how did you find relief or healing from that anger since you came to faith, and how did the faith play a role in that?
Mm-hmm. Well, the anger subsided. Well, when I didn't have to continually relive the circumstances that I went through, such as the incidences in Vietnam themselves, the crashing the aircraft, or the sabotaging of the one that I went down in, or the flashbacks. All those things started to meld away, and a lot of naysayers will say, well, that's just time.
Yeah.
Time will take care of that. I say it's not just time, because I can't even conjure those feelings up anymore.
Oh, wow.
And so if it was time that is the healer, instead of Christ erasing the triggers that brought those things up, no. So it still is a debatable situation, which I believe God does that is debatable. Those that believe will believe. Those that won't believe won't believe.
Mm-hmm.
So if you believe that I am the one that did it, therefore I am the one that did it. And but anyway, yeah, the night sweats, the hyper, the triggers. Now there's one, boy, fireworks. I hated the 4th of July.
There's a lot of fireworks around here, and not just on the 4th of July, as you know.
Yeah, right where we're at is unrestricted.
Yeah.
So fireworks, big bore guns in the 4 o'clock in the morning. But it doesn't bother me. I recognize that it's not pointed towards me, so I just go back to sleep. I can fire all night long. I don't give a darn, because I know it's not coming through my bedroom. So, but one of the biggest things was survival guilt. Why did those that did die, that I knew were a better person than who I was at the time, why did they die? And one of them was, he was a captain. I was only a warrant officer. He was a captain of a neighboring company, that the two companies had so much aircraft losses and damage that it took both companies flying together to make one. So every other day it would be one company or the other. Well, this other captain was a gunship pilot also. His name was John Spurgeon Sprewell. And it took me quite a while to recognize Spurgeon. You're kidding me. I wonder if his parents named him that from a name from their family, or were they naming him after Spurgeon?
Yeah, the preacher.
Yeah, the preacher. I didn't know. But he flew a superior aircraft than mine.
Mm-hmm.
But when we flew together, mine was slower, and it could loach around looking for the bad guy where he couldn't do that.
Mm-hmm.
So he graciously allowed me to be the lead gunship, and he'll fly my wing every time. And we made such a good pair. I didn't have to talk to that man. All I had to do is say, I'm taking fire and direction, and that was it. And he took care of it. And so I went on my extension tour, and it was around May time because that's when my birthday was. And so I was home for 30 days. When I came back, I found out he was dead. I said, how did that happen? You know, he was too good for that. Well, he stayed on station while his wingman abandoned him and allowed the 50 caliber, actually it's a 51 caliber, to tear him apart. And they found him 4 feet underground. And to this day, that really bothers me, that somebody would leave their lead gunship and allow them to take the brunt of this stuff. But anyway, so I was just always wondering why God allowed that to happen, because I really, really enjoyed being working with that man. And
is it a struggle to maintain a belief in God's sovereignty when you think about things like that?
No, it doesn't make me question his authority. It makes me wonder for what good? What good did that happen? And I don't know. I probably won't know until my day comes.
Seems like it is a mark of this life is no matter what your beliefs or worldview is, our lives are marked with uncertainties.
Absolutely. Yeah, uncertainties as well as, we don't know what the benefit was. Now, there may have been a benefit that I'm unaware of, totally, that it was not on my side of this story. But anyway, of those kind of people, I really want to surround myself with that kind of a caliber of an individual.
Yeah.
And so not always will that happen. I guess wherever I'm at, it's the people that are around me that I am to be working with. And here lately, we've been going to memorials, just one after another, and 2 more people that we know died Saturday night, and we didn't know until Sunday afternoon when we come home from church that they died that evening in a house fire.
Wow.
And said, wow. I don't know. Maybe it's my age. Maybe it's just a lot of people are going to be dying around us. And so it's another reminder that don't take too long to go tell your neighbors that God is the way. It's their decision whether they accept or not, but it's your responsibility to tell them. And so, yeah, and it's making me get off my duff and don't worry about all that stuff that the snow is going to cover up. It'll be there next year. So anyway,
yes, those will always be there.
Yeah, but the people that you need to see is talk to your neighbors, boy. Get out there and talk to them, and let's get her done. Let's get ready. So,
well, Merv, your story, I like some of the markers does it have. We've already talked some of them. Uncertainty, but yet still trusting. Is a beautiful marker in your life. The wounds you've received, and yet you are faithfully following the Lord. You're an example of a wounded warrior who has been healed, and you've come all the way here. And now with your current wife, coming to a local church and seeing you every Sunday, and now I know your story.
Yeah, and I'm glad that that God brought Connie and I together. We talked on the internet. She was hundreds of miles away, and after talking for a while, we'd ask, well, I never got a word in edgewise. She kept asking me all these questions, and I'm not a smoker, I'm not a heavy drinker, I don't do this, I don't do that, and this woman thinks pretty much the same as I do.
Yeah.
And then we found out, well, we're only 3 months apart. And still, I'm the older, so I get the last.
You got that on her.
Yeah, I do. Yeah. And I said, I'm coming to meet you. And
how long ago was that?
18 years.
Wow,
Yeah.
18. Wow.
18. Yeah. Well, it was 19 years actually. We've been married 18. So.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah. So anyway, that was something. So. I'm coming to see you.
Well, Marv, thank you for coming to tell your story. Hearing your story about Vietnam. I actually did like a book report in junior high about Vietnam. I obviously am too young to have gone there, but that's always fascinated me. And I've been to the Vietnam War Memorial in D.C.
Oh, have you?
Yeah.
I've been to the replica that came around.
Okay, sure. But I had never heard it from a perspective like yours, so thank you for telling your story.
Well, you're welcome, and I hope it helps someone else that, hold on to Jesus, because he will help, and he'll cure you of your of the things that are haunting you. And he's also the way, because our life here on earth is personally is short. And I think not only that is that the earth itself is coming to an end. So
it's the limiting factor of life that gets us off our couch.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so if we don't hurry up and get moving, time is going to come to an end. And
yes.
Opportunities, I know I've missed a lot of opportunities, and that bugs me too. So.
Yes, as all of us do.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Marv. Well, thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And I will see you at church.
In church, absolutely. See you then.
All right. Thank you, Marv.